good morning. This is yours truly, Robert Pete Edwards here on In Touch Radio News and Entertainment and all. And today, my main man, the host himself, Clint Parrish, is up in Rattlerland today. And, it's back to school time. And so I will be here with the young lady that keeps everybody on task and all. And she has some strong opinions of her own, Miss Anna. And we're going to talk about an issue that the black community just refused to deal with. And we're losing, in my mind, coalition people, Anna, because of it as we fight for equal rights and the whole bit. But before we get into that, let me remind our community. Next week, school starts back in a lot of places. They're going to have the police officers out there with the buses as they go through their training routines and all. Folks, unless you got $400 to blow, don't be passing stop school buses. Don't be speeding in school zones. You hit a kid these days, it may be a relative of yours or whatever. You know what I mean, Anna? And they just out here passing stuff and doing their thing. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let's respect our children. I'm coming down MLK today in Tampa, and they're putting up the traffic light right there by Lomax and the C. Blythe Andrews Library, and that speed is 40 miles an hour. So with the three lights within from 22nd to 34th Street, they're going to have basically four lights. So let's hope that will make a difference. But as we get into the week, a lot of topics are going on. If you noticed last week, the police chief in Chicago had a live press conference and talked about over 40 people shot, young children being shot, and they're just tired of it. So you look at that, and then you look at the right wingers. Whether they were, and I want to remind our listening audience, right wingers are just not in the Republican Party. Right wing extremists, you got some right wing extremists in the Democratic Party too. They just they vote under the Democratic label, but it doesn't mean they vote like that when they get in the booth. But the bottom line is, in all, where the black community is losing coalition members because we won't crack down on what we need to crack down on. That's crime within our community, even locally in the Tampa Bay area and all like that. So the question that we continue to run from is what it's going to take. Why would we give our enemies who don't believe in equal rights in the whole bit, why would we give them ammunition, Anna, to say, hey, I told you so, crime rate is up, they want to kill themselves and the whole bit, and then we don't turn nobody in. Yet we had another 4-year-old get shot somewhere, and 6-year-old just at a party. People were at a restaurant. They just had, if you've seen on the news, where this young man wasn't even 14 years old, this boy 14 or 16 years old, gunned down somebody. And yet we refuse to crack down on miscreants, I call them, criminals, organized gangs, and we have them in every community, whether it's Italian, black, Jewish, whatever, there's organized gang. But the question I have for the audience is, what will it take for us to crack down on crime within our community? Now, some community activists on the left will say they don't have a job. Let me tell you something, folks. There are jobs out there open all over the place. Now, I understand, not like those extreme right-wingers talking about they're living off the government money. They're not doing that, Anna. They want to increase in the hourly rate because people can't afford to, they can't afford to rent or own anything now because of the low hourly rate. But there are a lot of jobs out there. A couple of McDonald's I go to, the kids are calling in, and I would be trying to make all the overtime and extra hours I'm eligible to get, but they call in because they don't want to come work Saturday mornings, what have you. But when I look at the true picture, and we want you all to call in, and couldn't remember the number now, but Miss Anna let me know what that number is. We want you to call in and say, hey, look, why are we so reluctant? Or let me put it this way. Why do we harbor criminals in our community that do us no good? Why do we do that? I mean, we say it's not a mental health issue, but we want to say, well, they don't have a job and all. That's no excuse. Why are we protecting bad people in our neighborhood? Sexual assaults have gone up. Young teenagers and all can't even go to the store without the fear of being sexually assaulted. They're not coming in from the white neighborhood doing that. It's no Oath Keepers, Promise Boys, and all of the 3%ers and all that coming in our neighborhood doing that. That's happening within our neighborhood. Yet, after funeral, everybody said, well, we got to do something about it. And then we coddle criminals that we know are bringing in all kind of machinery and all. On Instagram this week, I saw where they had, I couldn't believe it, they had a Gucci handle or something, a fashionable handle on a gun. All of that. And these kids, they got a video this morning of a rapper who's already on probation, who's already out on federal bonding charges, shooting up something with an AR-15 or whatever, and had the nerve enough to put it live on Instagram in our neighborhood. And people say to me, well, white people do that. Well, you know what? Hell, I'm black. I live in a black neighborhood. I believe in cracking down on crime in our neighborhood. So let's talk about that. Why are we so reluctant to crack down on our folks? And I mean, I'm just, why are we so reluctant? You have any idea?
Well, so there's a different code of the streets, right?
Yes.
And I don't think that we correlate criminality with our people, right? So it would be hard. I mean, at the end of the day, they're still somebody's family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the threat may be there, right? They've probably been in these neighborhoods since they were born. Their prior family members were probably in the same type of situations that they were in. So it's become something that is normalized, right? It's not something that is out of the norm. So, I mean, should they tell? Probably so. But then there's still the perpetuation of us going to jail, right? So that may be something that they don't want to do, right? They don't want to send another black man to jail. So they're willing to just deal with the consequences of them being out there. I mean,
you hit a good point. You hit a good point, because in that point you talk about two things: a continuation of victims,
right?
Okay, and family. The other part of that we need to look at is the continuation of criminal organizations within family. Now they got. I mean, you can turn in somebody so many ways now. Nobody would know who's doing it. I mean, it really is the way they got it set up now. You can do that, but for one reason or another, we won't do it. And what gets me is that there have been some cases where the family members of a victim know who did it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even talk about retribution. They just say, well, that's life. And I'm talking about some old school people. Now, young people, okay, I get it. That's the culture and all. But how in the world could you say, well, he was my brother and all, but, we're not going to do that. And you let them terrorize our neighborhoods,
I mean, that's the life they chose, right? Me and my roommate were talking about this last night. You live by the gun, you die by the gun, right? So if that's the type of lifestyle that they're living, and they're not trying to change their lifestyle by getting a career or doing a trade and getting out of the streets, then more than likely the streets are going to take you out, right? So if that's my family member and I've talked to them and I've tried to do different things for them, right, to get them out of that life, and that's still the life that they chose. Well, if you get killed in the streets and I know who did it, well, chances are that was an issue between y'all that probably could have been settled without gunfire, but that's the lifestyle that you're living in. So chances are the family members almost are I would say numb to that, because I mean, if I know you're out there doing drive-bys and robbing people, well, then chances are somebody's going to do a drive-by and rob you, right? So if I know who they are, well, I mean, that happens, right? Like he said, that's the lifestyle.
Yeah, because I had a guy in our coffee group. We talked about this week as leading up to today's broadcast here on In Touch Radio. And don't forget the In Touch Entertainment News papers out. I'm not covering the front page with my handsome face. I just feel like I know it's a surprise to hear that from me, but it is what it is. I just feel like that today. But one of the guys in our coffee group talked about why should the black community expose those kind of problems? And I pointed out to him, look, there was an article, I believe, in the New York Post where they had these two guys knock down a sister, an elderly woman that was in a walker just going to the grocery store. Now, I mean, and then you have that, and nobody says anything. And then on the other end, we're out. See, I look at it like this: we need fresh people to train for leadership position, and you don't have to have formal leadership training to be a leader. You just have to have some basics: respect, fairness, you know, things like that. But we don't have a future because we can't filter out the bad from the good, or we refuse to do that. And then when you hear even those so-called liberals, politicians, including some black ones, talk about, well, why should this company give you money? Why should this group of people that used to be in the old civil rights movement give us money and everything like that, when we're going to crack down on issues like that? And it's a problem. We're getting beat up about it and all. And then the other piece that I thought was, had a white friend of mine pointed out, and he married to a black woman, but he pointed out some pictures where all of these young people got the machine guns and the whole bit. They got all the money, throwing it up in the air and all like that. And he says the thing that bothers him, that if the rappers and some of the others got all this money, why they not pooling their money to put a positive investment in our community? So it's a lot of dynamics to that, but I'm concerned we're losing respect from a lot of people, because now people wake up on a Monday morning and see what's the report in from Chicago, how many did they kill, and all this other kind of stuff. And the other part of it, what people don't realize, is not only the age group, but the number of young black women getting involved in that. And they hold the guns, they go in the clubs. We all know that when they have security at the clubs, the only thing, they take a little flashlight, a small one, and flash the front of the woman's purse. They don't go through it or anything. You don't see women's security guards. And then the next thing you know, somebody got shot, and they say, well, how did the gun get in there? But I'm really concerned as school starts back in the whole bit. What does it, and I want to hear an honest opinion from our listening audience. You can tell them the number, Anna. But I'm really surprised why we have not said enough is enough. I know in my work experiences over the years, we had cases, Anna, that the mothers and the dads allowed their kids, 14 and 15, to have a firearm arsenal in their room. And when we asked them during the investigations, well, you know, he's a teenager now, so we don't really do his room. And I'll let you comment from there before I think we got a caller. We're going to break us up. So what you think?
I mean, I don't know. What's it?
Your house. Since when does it? Your house that you pay mortgage on or whatever. Mm-hmm. Since when? I wouldn't allow it, and didn't allow it, where I got a 14-year-old daughter or son telling me that they can put whatever they want in their room and a lock or a padlock on their room in my house, and I don't have no right to search it. Now, see?
I don't know that they're saying that they don't have the right to search it, but if the parent is taking the stance of, I don't want to, I'm not going to, then they're giving that power over to the child. I mean, if you're not willing to assert your power as the parent, right? Because you're supposed to be training them up, you're supposed to be teaching them. So, I mean, unless they're teaching them the the proper way to store a firearm and to use a firearm, which other cultures do that, right? Where it's not uncommon that a 14-year-old would know how to use a gun. So, I mean, if they're teaching them in that way, then I don't see why that's an issue. But, I mean, they also have to know that it's their responsibility if anything happens with that child and that firearm.
And that's what happened in one case where the victim, with restitution and everything, they actually put a lien on the grandmother's house.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when the grandmother discovered that, well, too little, too late. Obviously, she didn't have the money to have a lawyer to fight it and everything. And then the kid later on got direct file as a 17-year-old and got sentenced to something like 18 years for continuing aggravated battery and shooting people just for the hell of it and stuff like that. And he was not, a lot of extreme white people will say, well, he was dumb in school and stuff, but he wasn't. So we're going to go to the break. We want you to call in. We'll give you the number and all. What will it take for us to keep the, I would call it implosion, because it's happening with our neighborhood. And I'm here with Mrs. Anna and myself today. Pretty Moon. And so it's a cloudy day. We'll be right back on In Touch Radio News. All right.
You've been injured, you deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is attorney Clinton Paris from the law office of Clinton Paris. For over a decade, I worked for insurance companies, and now I use that knowledge and experience to help people that have been injured. For a free consultation, call me, attorney Clinton Paris, at 813-413-7924. That's 813-413-7924, or at parislawoffice.com. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt. Offices, Riverview.
We're playing your favorite old school. Today's R&B. With a smooth touch of jazz. You're listening to In Touch Radio.
All right, we're right back here on In Touch Radio, straight up the middle. And now, if you want to hear some cool jazz, my boy Dale on In Touch Radio, I'm telling you, he's been all over the place. But join in, and we have some interesting conversations, business, anything you want to learn about the local community, especially if you're out of town and you want to come this way. All you got to do is go on the website, In Touch News website, In Touch Radio, the whole bit, and you'd be surprised of the they don't use this term anymore, smorgasbord. Well, that's the same thing as a buffet, y'all. I just want to tell you that. So we do that. Well, we got a call. Carlo, come in, and what say you this morning as we talk about an issue we keep running from? Is we put it on everything like a jobs and the whole bit. But what say you about the key why we refuse to crack down on black crime? Are you there, Carlin?
Good morning. Good morning, Pete. This is Clint giving a call in. How you doing this morning?
Okay. All right, my brother.
Listen, man, so every time, first of all, let me get something straight with you. Every time I don't show up for the show, you drift off to the right. This is why this show is called Straight Up the Middle. Pete, you gotta stay in the middle of issues. And let me tell you how you drifted right on this one.
All right.
When you were saying first that there are unique issues within the African American community that does not plague America in general. That's the first thing. I think America across the board has issues with crime, employment, health, and so on and so forth. Now, we may be affected at a greater rate by those dynamics, but I think America in general, we have those issues. The second one is the majority of the causes for those issues are not rooted within the African American community. So when we look to that community and say, hey, listen, America has created an economic environment that disadvantages African Americans, then you look to that group and say, okay, now what are you all going to do about that? And I granted that we have a lot that we can do within the African American community and other communities that are disproportionately affected by injustices in America. But I think that we have to look to the greater society and hold it accountable for the impact of these things in our community, like crime. We've been over police. You're an African American community, you're more apt to get stopped for a traffic citation than you are more a full community. Academically, occasionally, you're less prepared from the school system if you come out of school that's predominantly black. And I can go down the list and so on as it relates to employment and even health care. So I think that it's easy for, I think, Republicans to say, black community, you have issues. What are you all going to do about it? I'm okay with accountability, personal and community-wide, but I'm not going to let the greater society off the hook for the environment it's created, and now saying the causes or the effects of those actions need to be fixed by the black community. My question is, all right, law enforcement community, what are you going to do? We can do our part in the black community, but that problem is not going to be solved by grandmama turning in her grandson because, the police say they think he did something. So I just want to get you back in the middle with a few comments.
All right, let me get in the middle of this, Anna, because look here, bro. Look here, bro. You don't have to be conservative. When I said there's no excuse for an elderly black woman that she can't go to the store without getting knocked down by a couple of young thugs and while she's on a walker. See, that's a moral disrespect to me. I understand some of the other things, but you got a lady that's probably I think she was something like 80 years old or whatever. Look what she had to go through in this country. And then in broad daylight, if you look at the video in broad daylight, they just knocked her down for the hell of it and snatched her purse. I regardless of what political level, I just think that it's morally wrong to do any woman like that, but to do a grandmama, a woman of color, a soul sister, a real spiritual soul sister, and let Anna chime in on that, because I'm trying to stay straight up the middle, my brother, but it's Saturday, so we do rock and roll from Friday night and lean one way or the other, you know what I'm saying?
I have a question. Who's teaching the morals?
Well, that's interesting, because you heard that question she asked, right, Clint?
Who's about the morals?
Yeah,
who's teaching the morals, right? Somebody has to teach them to respect elders.
Well, okay, stay right there for a minute then. The amount of pressure on the black family unit and the inability of families to focus on developing the people within their own households, this is something Pete might agree. With desegregation, the African-American family lost a lot of influence over its children. Just imagine, little Johnny, he started getting dropped off at school at about 3 or 4 years old for 5-6 hours a day, every day for 12, 14 years. That's a lot of influence over a child. And once you had desegregation, the black community lost a lot of control of that. Now, how does that relate to the values? Well, because when schools are segregated and the schools were predominantly black and run by black teachers and principals, the same message you got at home is what you got at school. And I'm going to give you this real example right now, Pete. I'm living it right now live. I have a child at Florida State, and I have a child at FAMU. The effort and activity to insulate and welcome and embrace my child at FAMU far surpasses FSU. My child at FSU, he's on his own. Now, he can find a little enclave of support here and there. But at Florida A&M, from the people cutting the grass to the people in the library, they're looking at your child saying, I understand this. That's what you're going through, and I'm holding you accountable. So I think that's a part of what we go through with these values of some of these folks. Now, I agree with you, Pete. A lot of our kids are not being given and driven to follow the rules of society like you would expect them to, but that's going back to the family unit and the family breakdown of that family unit, not having a mama, a daddy set up in there, and then that goes over to the economics and the ability to do those things. So I think all kinds of stuff together. I'm just not going to let Pete drop this at the front door of the black community without bringing the greater community. For grandmama who gets knocked down, grandmama pays her taxes. She has a right to expect that law enforcement will be on the job to protect her. That's step one. Now let's talk about it in our community. I'm agreeable to that. But the first one, I'm not going to let them off the hook, is the things that society says it will provide to us, safety and protection and things that we pay our taxes for. I'm not going to let them off the hook with not doing that. Now, I'm not in favor of grandma getting knocked down, and I think those people should be prosecuted. And I'm going to say this, Keith. I'm going to move to the right with you just a little bit, just a smidge.
Okay.
Cross the line for a minute. I'm going to move over. Listen, I am all for people in the black community reporting and turning in criminals. I'm all for that. I'm all for accountability, but I think we have to hold everybody collectively responsible. And that's how you stay center from them.
All right, Anna's going. I don't know what she'll defend me, but when you said you're gonna move over to the right a little bit, it sound like you going from FAMU to FSU, and Gaines is right down the middle. You feel me on that, right? All right, Miss Anna, go ahead.
So Clint, you mentioned segregation, but who asked for integration, right? Because we were forced into. We didn't have to do integration. We definitely could have kept our own neighborhoods, kept our own businesses, and continued to foster that family unit that we had. But we wanted to go to white people's stores and work for them. So we gave up that part of ourselves, not realizing that we also gave up our part in raising our own families and showing our families what we could do together. So now we think that it's their responsibility to treat us a certain type of way when we didn't treat ourselves that way. So in order for anybody else to look at us with respect and to treat us the way that we want to be treated, we also have to do that for ourselves first. If we do that for ourselves, it won't be a problem for anybody else to do it for us. If we're sitting here asking them to do something for us when they know if we band together, we're going to shut them out, our economy is going to be better, they're not going to go for that, right? But we have to go for that. And when we go for that, it puts them in a position, you have to respect that. You have to.
And
well, absolutely. I think that one of the things no one probably oftentimes can really predict is the negative effects of something positive. And there are a lot of things that we have in this regard. You know, people say, oh, I want to go exercise. Go exercise. And you find out, wait a minute, my cartilage in my knees going bad. Well, there are always negative consequences, even when you take on good actions. And some people didn't anticipate. Now, there were people that fought against desegregation. People fought for segregation. And there were some pros and cons, and we got some pros and cons now that it's occurred. We just have to deal with those. I do not think the solution is segregating people away from other people, because that's almost impossible in America. If we had our own island someplace in an insulated world, maybe you can get away with that to a certain extent. But it's not really realistic in America.
I don't think it's impossible. They do it all the time. They got neighborhoods full of just them. We can do the same thing.
And you know what, Clint? It's interesting you say that, because when I talk about rebuilding our communities, one of the questions that's always brought up is that we ask for outside money, but there's a substantial amount of money inside our communities that refuse to match what we could get, let's say, on the outside. And then when you talk about the crime issue and what have you, there's a lot of people concerned about that, but they say we're not concerned about it. So when we're going to go to this break on this Saturday overcast day, everybody's going back to school getting book bags, and we want you to take advantage of that at the churches and all. I'm going to be leaving. I got on my Milton colored shirt today, but I'm a yellow jacket, but I also work with the Young Lions, so we're giving out, Clint, today about 250 book bags to the drive-by at Middleton. So for a day, I use this voice to be a tiger. So let's go to break, and when we come back, we want you to call in and say, hey, give me at least 2 viable solutions that we can stay straight up the middle on, but stop having kids. You go on the corner of 50th and Sly, and somebody want to sell your gun at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy.
And you can call in at 813-444-9588, and we'll be back.
All right.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here for you.
See you nodding your head and tapping your feet. In Touch Radio will be right back.
Y'all be playing some of the best music I ever heard.
With more of your OMG jams, we're In Touch Radio.
Yeah, everybody. I got everybody fired up. I got a text that people say, "Hey, why don't I hit on young people so much?" That's our future, folks. That's our future. And one of the things that I expanded the thought of Malcolm X when he said, "By any means necessary." And you know what? That by any means necessary, whatever it takes to clean up our neighborhood, we need to do that. So as we get ready to go back to school, tell your sons and daughter, look, I'm retiring out. I need you to step up and sustain what community we have left, because we can't keep running to the other side and then act like we're the other side and then ignore all the problems in our community. And it doesn't matter whether it's crime or affordable housing. When I look at all these brothers talking about how much money they got, whether it is sports stars and or whatever, and they don't, they could put together a coalition and rebuild black business, put together a coalition and get affordable housing and stuff like that, but they won't do it. So you got the extreme right will say, hey, here's an opportunity. Now, it's one thing if Anna and I put in a ton of money and say we're going to clean up our neighborhood and we're going to put affordable housing in, and then government through systematic racism say, hey, we're not going to let you get the right zoning and all like that. But we don't even get to that point. And my concern, again, is that the number of younger and younger victims, you cannot just look the other way when we know what's going on and killing our young kids who have no idea what their future want to be. They dream of what their future want to be. And so sometimes, even when you're going straight up the middle, you have to get, you can do it diplomatically, but you have to really get tough and say, hey, you know what, bro? Know what, sister? If you really believe in the royal bloodhood, it's a different thing. All right, we got a call this morning on In Touch. You're here with Miss Anna, and yours truly, Sweet Pete. I don't feel like that today. I must have drunk it all off last night or something for happy hour. But anyway, go ahead, caller. Come on in.
What's your name and where you calling from?
Hey, good morning. This is Carl. I was calling. I was chiming in on what the good attorney was just saying or whatever. Our community do need a little bit more policing, as far as but not to the forceful part or whatever. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the community needs to get more involved as far as bringing up some of these guys to justice. But you also can look at some of the. I bet you that same day that black woman was pushed down, somewhere in the white community, some white woman got her purse snatched over in the trailer park somewhere. So you also have to look at that type of area that they're in too. So it goes both ways.
Well, let me ask you something, Carl. Go ahead. I want to ask you a question.
Like you said, our community is always going to be scrutinized for whatever we do, and like saying the underfunding and the over policing, that plays a big part, and the under education. So and our economics are way lower. So you got guys scraping and struggling and trying to survive. I'm not excusing them to go to crime, to go to criminal activity, but they're just in a survival mode.
But how do you, for me, as a black man, who understood from the time I was born, you don't beat up on sisters, you don't cuss them out, you respect the elderly, even if it's Brother Pete, what we may call that has his drink on the corner. He has a certain age, you don't do that. So if we're going to talk about over policing and all, is it wrong for us to over police within our community groups to say, hey, a citizen type of thought process, we're not going to tolerate this foolishness. And then I let Anna chime in on that.
Somebody taught you that, though, Pete.
Well, yeah, I was
Somebody-
taught.
okay.
Yeah, but
That-
it was taught at home and in the community.
All right.
So
but
I'm
that's
just saying-
not being taught anymore. So we
Well-
have to get back to teaching that to the children.
Well, that's why
we
I
have
asked
to
him
get
that.
back to value, right? If we don't value ourselves, we can't value anybody else, right? So they don't look at each other as brother and sister. We don't look at each other as community members. We look at each other as the competition. So if you my competition and you making more money than me, then I'm going to take you out because I don't want a competition, right? Instead of it being a value type deal of what is this brother doing to get this money? Let me ask him how he's doing that, and let me see if I could be an apprentice up underneath him. We're not doing that anymore.
Carla, what you say on that? And if you could give our listening audience 2 quick pointers on because see, I learned a long time ago some of the best training I got off the street was from men who were not had all the higher education degrees. They just kept it real. So what would you give us 2 quick pointers? What role can men truly play that match up with reality where the kids can respect it and it gives them inspiration to move forward, to tighten up on this, eliminating all this violent crime against each other? It's bad enough white people want to do it against us, but it's worse when we recognize that and we help them put us in a hole by doing crime on each other. What do you say?
Okay. Put more funding and more emphasis on the Big Brother program, and put that, and organize, say something, do something, give that community a little bit more something to be proud of. Then when you go to a community, I mean, you rehab this community so they can afford some of those houses that they're being rehabbed. They're just they're just underprivileged. So this funding or whatever, it should go down inside the community where it's really, really needed. Not, and that should be part of the infrastructure.
Now you hit on the
Not
right
just the
point
roads
there,
and
and he hit on the right point. Let's see, we get a lot of funding, okay, but what happens is it doesn't funnel down really into the grassroots part. And then the other part of that, Carla, what I found out about in working with funding programs and all, a lot of the funding is tied up in administrative costs. For an example, you get a $100,000 grant for a community, and then you find out that 60% of it is in salaries. What kind of foolishness is that? That's not planting seeds in the community. I'll ask you this point, because I've seen it happen, and I believe it happened, that black men who are rehabilitated can make a difference. But one of the questions has always been for those brothers I know that have done that is that they can't get cooperation from brothers who act like they never got in trouble. What do you say about that? And then I want to hear from Anna's perspective too.
Okay. I listen to this show that comes on that evening or whatever. It has this newly exonerated where these guys are they're going to prison or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, when they go in there, these guys with their false accused, when they come out or whatever, give those guys something to where it makes them more easy to get a job for employment, because once they come out of it's hard for them to get employment. So they have to try to organize or try to be entrepreneurs or whatever at the little finance they have or whatever, and it becomes a struggle.
And that's true, but Anna, and I'll let you just take on that, because it's the same thing with women coming out of prison.
Out of prison, right?
They want to do more, but when I talk to sisters that have come out of Lowell and even the federal prison through the work release program and Goodwill and all, one of the obstacles that black women run into, that sisters who think they so highly educated or polluted or whatever, they don't want to deal with them. How can one sister, because I told the girl, I said, well, you almost have to slap one of them educated ones upside the head. Well, that was street lingo. I don't mean physically, but kind of, hey, listen, I'm still a sister. How do black women deal with that? Because I think there's no question in my mind that women are still the power in our community. But when I talk to sisters that are coming out of the institution, they cringe when they see sisters that they even grew up with all of a sudden forgot where they've been or forgot them. So how did you see the frustration?
It's the same thing that I said 5 minutes ago. Value. We don't value each other. We don't. The woman who came out of incarceration is not valued by the woman who has gone on and got a higher education and got her a nice little paying gig. She doesn't value her. She doesn't look at her as a sister and says, okay, she's gone through something. Let me do what I can do with the power that I have gained to help her out. And the more that I help her, the better we all can be. Right? Mm-hmm. We do not value each other the way that we are supposed to.
Yeah, because you know what? Here's a good street thought for you. How many sisters and brothers took the hit in anticipation that this other person that they took the hit for would remember them as they grow and glow with their education or whatever when they got out? You agree with that, bro? I know a whole lot of guys went down to protect upper black guys in the community, and then when they got out, they were just abandoned. That wasn't right, because they could have told on him, you know, especially in federal cases. What do you say? How do we dictate and make those that we protected understand? Hey, look, we could have took you down with us, but we stepped out on faith that you be ready to help us when we get out. What do you say to those kind of people that abandoned me getting out of prison, even though I took the rap for them?
Well, then also, our law sometimes protects the criminal, or whatever. Something, from prosecution. So there's a big chance that criminal may get off. He may get off or whatever, or then he have a connection, whatever. So the guy that snitched end up, snitching or whatever, then he get repercussions. If I do a relocation program where we get that guy out of the community. If you're gonna get involved in prosecuting this guy, so he can't go back to the community.
Well, that's true. And one of the things that I talk about all the time and when I'm out on the street is urging our community, look, this is our community. I've always taken the impression that if the city, for an example, got $500,000 for street improvements, my first goal is to make sure that in my community that 2 or 3 of my streets who have not got funding in 15 years for repayment or whatever, is to go down there and fight for those streets inclusion in that $500,000. So we're gonna let Anna finish this out, and then we're gonna go on a break. And we want you to take don't forget the In Touch newspapers out on the stand. Send in some opinions, some editorial opinions. I'm sure Darryl will review them, and if they're worthy, he'll put it in. And don't forget to listen to all the other business shows and everything that's listed in the In Touch radio website and also in the newspaper. Occasionally, Anna, I even wrote an op-ed piece myself. Got one coming up that talks about kingdom men versus real men. Is there a difference? We're gonna deal with that topic later on. Kingdom men versus real black men. Is it a difference, or are we twins, or are we neither? So Anna, take it from here. We're going on break now. You want me to sing that Pretty Moon song? I
mean, we have to also remember that ownership is key, and when we don't own, we don't control it.
Now explain that. What? Because people hear that term ownership, and they always think about financial ownership. But to me, I think about spiritual and community ownership.
That, and you also have to own the land. I mean, you can ask the government to come down there and fix those roads, but if the majority of y'all are renters, well, the owners of those houses are the ones that the government is going to listen to, because that is technically who is paying the property taxes, right? You're not paying the property taxes, even though you're paying the rent. The owner of that property is paying the property taxes, and that owner probably doesn't live over there. So where the owner lives is where he's going to focus on the streets, right? He's going to advocate for the neighborhood that he actually lives in, not that the neighborhood that he's renting in. That he doesn't care about you. He just wants you to pay the rent so that he can pay the mortgage.
And that's a good lesson for our community, especially young people, if you're listening.
If you don't own it, they're not about to listen to you. They're listening to the owners, and that also goes into the education. the property owners are the ones who are determining the education. So if
Yeah.
you are not owning, then you are putting yourself at a disadvantage because the government is not going to listen to you because you technically don't have the say-so that you think you have.
That's what I'm talking about. People think because we pay a lot of our money in sales taxes, that's not as powerful as property taxes. You know what I'm saying? All right, is it break time for us? Okay, we're going to go on a break. It's been a fast-moving hour. And we want you to send in your comments to Clint, Daryl, Anna, and myself, and give us some ideas how we crack down on this crime, because we're going to be left out on the island by ourselves if we don't straighten it up, especially with school coming back in. So let's take this quick break on In Touch News. I behaved myself today. I just feel conservative today. You know what I'm saying? A real conservative. We'll be right back.
In Touch Radio, where you can listen to a cruising flow of smooth soul and jazz, today's R&B, a fun touch of hip-hop and gospel.
All my music on one station.
Giving you a buffet of music, news, and entertainment. We're In Touch Radio. We're playing your favorite old school. Today's R&B. With a smooth touch of jazz. You're listening to In Touch Radio.
All right, In Touch Radio. And for those of y'all that want to be funny today, the applause is not because I said I feel real conservative. Don't get it twisted, okay? You know what I'm saying? That's just part of the promo. But I want to remind you, support your people. In Touch Entertainment, newspapers out, the In Touch Radio. Support our own. And then you find out, you get a wealth of knowledge in the whole bit. As we talk, reminding everybody that all over the place, churches, different groups, are giving out book bags. They had to change some stuff up, Anna, because we were going to have the kids out. And then this variance has come out again. And so we can't have all the closeness like we was. But there are a lot of book bags given away all over the place. Everybody that I know of that from Daryl and Tammy on down here at In Touch Radio and In Touch News, we volunteer our time to give back to the community, especially the elderly, the disabled, and the children. And so this is the next 2 weeks, we're all about helping out, pass out book bags. We want to urge you to follow the advertisers in the paper because they are good people. Get to know them, share the wealth, but also share the knowledge of everything. As we got a few more minutes on this show. Now, this week, Anna, I had a lady friend of mine that talked about the other part of the crime issue is that we refuse to relate or correlate the issue of our young people having mental health and developmental issues as children that we failed to address, and now it's coming out in criminal behavior. What do you say about that? I had a couple of mothers tell me that, and they were serious. They didn't bat an eye on that.
I would say that is absolutely accurate. But that also goes back to us as a family, right? Parents don't have time to recognize problems within their children. If my child is at school for 8 to 10 hours a day, because I'm at work, and by the time I get off work, I'm pressured by, let me get dinner done, let me get you bathed and in bed, let me get your homework done, let me try to get a peace of mind, right? Because I hate my job too, right? I hate my job. I got mental crises myself, so I can't focus on helping my child get over or work through whatever it is they're going through. So we, as Clint said, there's a lot of pressure on Black families to try to just survive, right? They're in survival mode, so they can't go into a safe space and say, this is what's going on with me, right? Mental health is definitely becoming something more prominent, and people are talking about getting therapy and self-care and taking care of yourself, because when you are able to take care of yourself, then you're better able to take care of others. But if I'm in a pressurous situation all day long, I don't realize that my child is going through something, right? Because I'm going through something and nobody's checking in on me, or I don't have the time to take care of me. So then I can't really take care of somebody else if I can't take care of myself. And we don't realize that that is an ongoing cycle within us.
And that's a good perspective, and I want our listening audience to know that that's just not from a black woman's perspective, but that's from a black parent perspective. I mean, sometimes our male egos, and I admit to this, that myself and brothers over the years, sometimes we let our ego get in the way because we want to be it's Leo month, so we want to be the king of the jungle. But you know what? I tell you what, we need to learn how to work together on stuff. Brothers tell me all the time, well, my wife or my girlfriend think something wrong with my kid. He just need to grow up and be a man. Well, if you don't have a plan of action, and if you're not recognizing, because like Anna said, the mother most of the time is there longer than you are. And you just going to brush her off like that because, quote, she's trying to run the household. That's an issue. Right. Because then it comes back later, you see your son or your adopted son or your girlfriend's son that you actually helped raise, they get in trouble and all, or get in a criminal spree or what have you, and then all of a sudden it hits you that this is what was going on, but we didn't recognize it then. And mental health is a issue. If you look at some of the recent court cases, Anna, a lot of the young kids that are involved in violence and even sexual battery, they've had some mental health problems, including, and I'm going to allude to it because it is an issue, all these games and all this stuff on social media and all that they think is all right. And then when they get caught, get jammed up in it, then it's a crisis. So I wanted to bring that up because developmental screening does play a role in criminal behavior.
Right. And there's also what I'm starting to notice is that there is a disconnect between reality and fantasy, right? If I am in a fantasy world all day, and fantasy is the computer, right? That is, you still have to tell the computer what to do.
Absolutely.
If I'm just doing games and I'm not really in touch with real life, then I think that it's okay. If I'm playing video games all day and all I'm doing is shooting folks all day, it doesn't occur to me that when I go out and use a real gun that, oh, this person doesn't just come back to life, right? Because in the video game, I can start my life over a million times.
Yeah.
And I could shoot them with all kinds of guns. But I don't make the recollection that in reality, that's not what happens. In reality, when you shoot someone, you could kill them, and then that consequence also falls back on you.
And
so you don't get to do
that
in real life, right? That is a game, and so we don't teach them that this is different or even allow them to play these things when we know that that is psychologically messing with their brains. We also don't understand that developmental ages, that is where they learn the most. So if at 3 years old, all I know is how to get on the computer, and that's how I communicate. That's how I can hide behind whatever I'm going through, right? I don't have to tell people that I don't have any food at home. I don't have to tell people that my lights are off. I don't have to do any of those things, right? I can pretend to be a completely different person, and I don't have to face reality.
And that contributes, as I told someone this morning getting coffee, that contributes to the black on black crime.
Correct.
If you got a limited boundary, and you playing Grand Theft Auto and all them other games that shoot up everything and stealing cars and all like that, but you got a limited physical boundary where you live and all, then what happens? You go in that limited boundary and you practice what you think you can get away with on the game. Carjackings, shooting somebody in the head and all like that. And then, or what I really disdain a lot is these young people that have the nerve to get on Instagram within their own neighborhood, showing how they can fire the gun and all this other kind of stuff. And the limited environment makes it easy for them to be confined because they're easy to find. They have recognized cars, a license tag. They put everything. They put the parents' license tag on there and all. but that all contributes to environmental problem of crime in our neighborhood. So, it's a foregoing struggle. People ask me all the time why I stay with it, because we have to have a transition period. If you look at Black history, whether it's look at what's happening in South Africa now. Look at the transition from Ghana to America. All of that. We have to have a transitional period, but we got to have the pieces in places, the people in places, the trainees in places to get it ready. It's going to be messy, yes. Sometimes you'd be overvalued and underappreciated, if I can say that. It's a joint effort. It can't be all men and it can't be all women. We can't ignore certain gender-specific groups because they're Black. They're not supposed to be like that. Listen, at the end of the day, we're all Black, and more than likely, we're all gonna find a way to congregate with each other, especially when we're hurting. And so, you agree with that? Because it's amazing to me. People disappear, but then when it really hits home, we set aside our differences and we cry together because we're hurting. And then during that mourning, that stages of grief, we recognize we could have done something more.
Right, but when we've recognized that we should be doing something more, that is also left right there where we were crying. We don't take that with us and say, let's do more from this moment on. We leave that right there where we were crying at. So it's there. We know it exists, but it also takes sacrifice to make sure that does something. It takes being uncomfortable, right? Having uncomfortable conversations with family, with friends, putting ourselves in a position that says, this is what I'm going to do, even though it goes against whatever mainstream has said that we should do, right? And we need to be able to stand strong in what we know we should be doing. We don't need to be relying on anybody else to tell us what to do. We know what to do. It just takes us doing it. And I think it's easier for us to just say, oh yeah, we should do that, but not do it, because that means we have to put in the work. That means we have to put in the time. We have to put in the effort. We have to put in the energy. And it's easier to say we're going to do something than to actually do it.
And what is faith without works is dead. And when you talk about this show straight up the middle, look at it. You have to have a balanced approach to it. Everybody's not going to appreciate it. People will join the bandwagon at the end of the day and not put in any work and all, but it's the sum total of all the parts that you hope something good come out of it. And that's why you have all the different discussions on the show. So as we get ready to close out today, we want to remind everybody, please, school is starting. They're going to be giving out tickets as the buses go on these runs all over the country, getting ready for the kids to go back to school. The life you save by not going around the bus may be your own kid. So don't speed and all like that. Respect your children going to school. Leave them alone. If they get out in the street, slow down a little bit and let them cross the street, even though they might not do it the right way. We want you to get the In Touch newspaper, some nice photos, but support the sponsors in that. And listeners, why don't you go online and on In Touch News online and send us your comments. We can't get stronger unless we clean up with that. So we're going to go out on this beautiful Saturday morning. I'm a yellow jacket, but I got on as we go over to Middleton to give out these book bags. The kids got to be in the car with their parents. And parents, don't you use the book bag to put your dope or your guns or none of that stuff in there. The book bags are for the children. Thank you very much. Because if I see you doing that, I'm going to call you out. And, I'm at an age now, bro. It don't matter. You know what I'm saying? It don't matter. All right, we'll see you next week on another edition as Clint try to straddle the fence himself between FSU and FAMU. And it's funny when the kids get together, they're all in the same. They just hanging out in Tallahassee, top flight or somewhere, the moon or whatever the case may be. All right, we'll see you next week on another edition of In Touch.